Morning folks, keep these videos coming along. Today again I'm in one of those sort of far western Sydney nature reserves. This is called Castle Ray Nature Reserve. It's out in the Penrith Cranebrook area. It's a beautiful patch that is under conservation, part of the National Park Estate, managed by National Parks. And it's definitely one of these reserves that's been saved from development, probably back 20 or so years ago, due to a whole bunch of passionate people saving it. It'd be prime housing country. It's all flat land, but we've got plenty of endangered ecological communities in here, like Cooks River Castlereagh Ironbark Forest. If I haven't told you before, pretty much all the bushland in Western Sydney is endangered. It comes under one EEC or another, what we call endangered ecological communities. And here I'm probably in what we call a little bit of Castlereagh swamp woodland, or at least Castlereagh scribbly gum woodland. Those two are a bit intermerging and a bit interchangeable, but where you've got sort of low depressions that get sort of swampy with a lot of sandy soil, you get this Castlereagh swamp woodland. There's trees around at the moment. There's even Corymbia gomifera here, and that's sort of funny enough, but that's here. Corymbia eximia is back about 1 kilometre over that way. We've got a lot of Angophora bakeri. There's a ton of Angophora bakeri in these parts. And there's also scribbly gum. There's plenty of scribbly gum, which we'd call Eucalyptus sclerophylla. But in amongst it all, and you sort of got to get your eye in for it, it can trip us up a little bit. There's a tree called Eucalyptus parramattensis, the Parramatta Red Gum. And I haven't had a lot to do with this one, but there's plenty of it here today, and it'll be a good opportunity for a video. What you start to notice is you start to see these trees, and again, just putting things in a bit of a reference framework, you start to think they're punctata. Eucalyptus punctata, the grey gum. I raved on in the punctata video about these salmon patches and this grey bark. And when you look at that, you go, well, man, is that punctata? What's that doing here? But it's Parramatta Red Gum, and it's not punctata. There's no punctata in these reserves. It's described as a gum, and it's described as a red gum. It's got this sort of thin fibrous bark, but then it's got a smooth trunk underneath that. If you thought the chunks looks like punctata, I wouldn't blame you at all. They sort of do. I'll just show you one of the main differences in a minute, but I'll just showing that bark. Look, it's shedding off in these big sort of really light, these are really lightweight plates. But it's definitely got a real punctata look to it. But if I go up to the foliage is blue. I would argue it's more blue than green. It's got a real blue tinge to it. And it doesn't look like a punctata canopy, not really. I just made a video on Eucalyptus squamosa, and I sort of put this guy in the same bucket. I'm going to be unfair to it, but it's a bit of a miserable eucalypt. These ones here sort of look okay, but it's a little bit miserable. It sort of looks a lot of the time like it's struggling to stay alive in a lot of places where you find it. The scribbly gums here have got a nice healthy canopy, and the Angophora bakeri have got a nice healthy canopy. But these parramattensis, they sort of look a bit straggly, as if they're sort of struggling to grow, and that might be the typical swampy environment. They always have a bit of dieback, or I should say generally they have a bit of dieback. They've got some dead branches here and there. And you know, if you like growing eucalypts, either for landscaping or gardening or anything like that, I reckon parramattensis would be one of the last ones you decide to use. They're just not very, very attractive. A bit like the Eucalyptus squamosa on that other video. This patch has recently had a fire. I would think it had been a controlled burn, but I'm not sure about that. But that doesn't really matter. There's plenty of parramattensis about. So through here again, we've got scribbly gum. When you've had a fire in a patch, I find Eucalypt sapling ID really challenging. It's really, really challenging. When you've got all this epicormic growth, if the fire's been really severe, it's really challenging. We've got, parramattensis. We've got parramattensis mixed in with scribbly gum. And if they've been burnt, that can be a little bit, just a little bit tricky. Things like Angophora bakeri are no problem, but sometimes it's a little bit difficult to tell what's a parramattensis and what's a scribbly gum after fire. And generally for me, any New South Wales bushland that's had a severe burn, I struggle to identify the saplings and the epicormic growth. It's just not ideal, but it's only this side that's had a fire, and this bit over here has some more mature parramattensis in it. That's got a very punctata looking trunk. That's incredibly punctata-like when punctata is a sapling. Even that sort of rough stuff there. So this guy does a very good job of trying to look like punctata, but as soon as I see that bluish foliage, punctata's got very greeny, I'd say green, maybe with a tiny hint of blue, and it's very discolorous. And I don't think this guy is going to have those features. Eucalyptus parramattensis, it has we would say a bit of a smaller geographic range. It's purely a New South Wales tree. It grows down as far south of around the Mittagong area in that Upper Nepean catchment. And I think the other day, I was right on the southern end of its range in the Upper Nepean State Conservation Area water catchment, which is just there, just to the north of Mittagong, or pretty much the Mittagong area. I would have been right on the southern edge, I think. It goes up the coast to about towards sort of Newcastle, Port Stephens. I think it gets up about that far. And then it punches through the Hunter Valley a bit to Cessnock and those localities around there. And it also goes as far as sort of Gulgong, which is, I don't know, out there north of Bathurst. I've been to Gulgong before, but it occurs as far as there, as far as I can see with herbarium records. So that's sort of the extent of its range. I think you can pick it up along the Putty Road, northwestern Sydney, Candos, sort of around that area, but that's sort of the limit. So it's, I don't know what that would be. You might be able to draw about a 200 by maybe 200 kilometre box around it, something like that. Maybe something like a 300 by 300 kilometre box, but that would be sort of getting to about the maximum of the geographic range. Got some material here. Now remember, it's a red gum. So it's in that red gum group with things like Pterodocornis, amplifolia, and some other ones. Red gum can be complicated. They can be pretty complicated. And what it's described as having is buds in sevens, and I found some beautiful buds here. And if you look at those, I know this is sort of hard to sort of describe, but that's what I call sort of a typical red gum appearance. Buds like that, a nice long operculum. Sevens is a common number for the red gum, so they are in the 7 to 15 bucket. And that's a nice example there. I'm a little bit worried. They are described as being in sevens, and that's what I'm getting. But just note how complicated these concrete boxes are. I've got one here that's throwing, just get my eye in for it, that's throwing 8 or 9. Yeah, that might be it there. So look at that one, it's got 8. So this is where you do some representative sampling. And people say, yeah, but I found one once with 8 buds. And I've even heard some people say, yeah, I found one with 8 buds and I reckon it's a different species. You got to allow a bit of variability in the eucalypts. That one's got 8. So this is really throwing, yeah, we've got a couple with 8 here. So we're still going to say they're in 7s, and you know, look, maybe you just get the odd one that has 8, but that's typically what you get there. So on Euclid they're described as having 7. I think on New South Wales Flora they're described as having 7. Looking at this guy, maybe they should be described as having 7 to 9. Check this one out here. It's got just got to get it out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's got 10. Isn't that interesting? So I would say here that the 7's going out the window. Yeah, sort of the two primary resources I use, Euclid and New South Wales Flora Online, are saying the buds are in 7s. Well, they should be in 7s, and we can definitely see that there. That's what you're typically going to look for, buds in 7s like that. But I can see many examples here where they're in 8 or 9 or 10. Now that's a bit worrying, because I've got some with 8 bucking the trend here. That one's got, yeah, that's 8. I can learn how to count. Just got to wrestle with this foliage. I've got another one here that's one, look at that, 9. That one's in 9. So this just might be an example of where we don't have a really clear-cut case of 7s. And possibly that's been overlooked, or possibly that can just happen and no one has observed that maybe. I'm just going to show these ones. My finger. Yeah, that's got 10. Wow. Okay. So what we might have to think is they're in 7s to 11s, maybe. There's a lot of 7s and less on this one, but they're definitely moving up above 7 in some cases. You know, I'm positive this is parramattensis growing in this area. Just going to get these ones here. And yeah, most of these are in 7s or less, with some broken off. So it's just about representative sampling, but you know, this might be an indication here that we can get more than 7. But just note, online, 7 is the convention. Oh, the leaves, they're very blue, as you can see. Got a very blue hit to them. They're sort of medium sort of thickness. They're not overly thin. They're not papery thin, but they're not overly thick either. So another one of those ones that's in the middle. Remember Pterodocornis, my Pterodocornis video, that was on the same bucket there. I just said they're not overly thin, not overly thick. They're not overly long. Most leaves here are getting to about 10 centimetres or so. So not overly long. These guys here are getting up to 15 or more. So these might be a bit more mature, getting up to 15 centimetres or so. Some of these guys are getting to, yeah, about 3 centimetres wide. I'd even say that one there is getting above 3 centimetres, but that might be sort of semi-juvenile. This is all coming off small trees, but I'd say the leaves are generally to about 15 centimetres and maybe up to 3 centimetres wide. So sort of in that bucket. These are a little bit more, these guys are a little bit more papery, just a little bit more on that papery side. They're concolorous. Remember Eucalyptus pterodocornis was also concolorous. Just get a few examples. These are totally concolorous. I can't see any hint of discoloration. The light might be tricking us there. Yeah, that one's a little bit discolorous. That one there, just a tiny bit. So there might be a little bit of discoloration. Yeah, that one looks discolorous. So generally the leaves are described as being concolorous. I'm getting a bit of variation. I'm getting a bit of discoloration here, just slightly, just slight discoloration. I wouldn't call it strong, just slight maybe. It could be the sun coming through the cloudy, coming through sort of the cloudy sky here at the moment. It's not quite sunny, it's a bit of a glary day, but I reckon I can easily see the discoloration in that one. Again, if they're more juvenile, the discoloration might be there. But just note that they're generally concolorous. Yeah, generally on the concolorous side, or maybe we'd say the concolorous end of the spectrum. And then lastly, we just move to our fruits. And I haven't been able to get a great deal, but this is generally the look to them here. So they're hemispherical, just sort of cup-shaped. And they're going to have exerted valves. The valves are going to be exerted when they open. 3 to 4 valves, I think they're described as having. 3 to 4 in the main. If you think they might be scribbly gum, the scribbly gum here is smaller. They're a lot smaller from these Eucalyptus sclerophyllus that are here. And these guys are a bit more pedunculate. Pedicellate, I should say, sorry, that's pedicellate. They've got individual stalks there, looking about 5 mil, and with a peduncle probably getting up to 10 mil. Yeah, so that's a pretty good showing of the fruit there. It doesn't quite look like a punctata fruit, it looks a bit different. If you think you're confusing it with punctata, it doesn't quite look like a punctata fruit would. Just got some more here, but they're not in 7s anymore. They've well and truly left that 7 stage. You can even see scars there where they're broken off. But that's a typical fruit for parramattensis. It's not a tree again that puts on a load of material. They can be very sort of, I find them a little bit miserable in how much material they're put on. And if I came back, probably get a lot of fruit next time. You can see again, they're solitary in the leaf axils, well and truly down their branches there. So doing the typical eucalypt feature of axillary inflorescences. Parramattensis, it only grows to 15 metres tall. That's the maximum height it's given. Someone could always find a taller one, of course, but it's about 15 metres up. And again, they're in the swampy country, and that's probably why. They're in the swampy country, slightly moist soils. You can see the really dense grassy ground layer here. It's a little bit of a depression here with, it would hold a lot more moisture content in the soil. We get Melaleuca shrubs as well. There's 3 subspecies listed on Euclid. 3 subspecies. One's just a run-of-the-mill subspecies Parramattensis, which occurs in the Sydney area, probably out to Golgong, I would think. In the Hunter Valley, there's one called subspecies Decadens. I've never come across that. Decadens is meant to have larger fruit, larger buds. It grows around curry and cessnock, I believe. And it's a listed threatened taxon. So subspecies Decadens is a listed threatened taxon in New South Wales. And I've never seen that one, but there's plenty of swampy country around curry. And sorry, then there's a 3rd subspecies, which I believe has been found in Western Sydney to the Blue Mountains. Now, it could be possible that that's where I am. That's the one I've got right here. So I'll just have a look at the details of that one. Yeah, the third subspecies is called subspecies Sphaerocalyx, which I think means sort of rounded operculum, and that's what it's described as having. And I'm right in the area for it. It's meant to be recorded from Parramatta to the foot of the Blue Mountains. And that's where I am. I'm right in that zone. I'm in a sort of direct western line from Parramatta to the foot of the Blue Mountains. And it's meant to have a rounded operculum. And not familiar with all with subspecies Sphaerocalyx, but if this is it, I just wouldn't be sure. It's meant to have a rounded operculum. These look pretty pointed to me. Happy to hear your comments. So I don't know if I'd have subspecies Sphaerocalyx here, but I'm well and surely in the geographic range where it says it occurs, if it occurs from Parramatta to the Blue Mountains. You just got to look out for it when you're in this scribbly gum woodlands. In my early days, it was one I tended to overlook. I would sort of be thinking they were scribbly gums, or I was sort of thinking they were sort of weird looking punctatas. But then I got familiar with parramattensis. So just note that salmon colouring. And then you've just got to get familiar with its habitat, its stunted nature, the bluey green leaves, and then just look for those red gum fruits and sort of red gum buds, just slightly different to what punctata throws. So hopefully that's one you can get familiar with. I find it a bit of a trickier one, parramattensis, just slightly a bit more obscure, and if it doesn't have any fertile material on it, it can trip you up a little bit. Alrighty. Just adding a few more notes. That subspecies Sphaerocalyx, New South Wales Flora doesn't currently recognise that one. So I don't know if Euclid believes in that one or not. It looks like they do, but what I like to joke is it doesn't look like New South Wales Flora believes in that one. That subspecies Sphaerocalyx. To split subspecies parramattensis from decadens, you've got to have fruit above 7 mil wide. So it's exactly like the scribbly gums that have fruit at that 7 mil mark. If you got 7 mil or more, that will be subspecies decadens, and you probably have to be in the habitat for it. If you've got fruit less than 7 mil, that'll be subspecies parramattensis. So you just need to get the ruler out there. With my naked eye, I'd say these fruits are, I'd say they're right on the 7 mil mark. Or I haven't got a ruler, but I'd say 6 mil, 7 mil. They would be, but there's no records for decadens here anyway. Just an additional note there on the subspecies.